How's it going, everybody? Ed here, and today we are going to be building the high-grade Universal Century 1:144 scale Dom Tropen, by Bandai, of course. This is a kit from 2002, so it's one of the older high grades, so there's a couple weird things about it, but overall it looks really nice. Really awesome illustrations by B-Craft all around the box, and showing off all the awesome accessories that it comes with. Parts look pretty standard. The instructions also have some really awesome Photoshopped work, as well as some really awesome line art in it. Also some really noticeable shading around the legs that I really like. Alright, now let's build this thing. The Dom comes with a couple different colored trays of parts, pretty standard for an older kit, a nice chunk of them. It also comes with a sticker sheet, but we won't be needing that, ever. Nice details and really nice panels that'll be really nice when they're shaded. And a ton of different weapons. Some facts about the Dom Tropen include that it was developed from the Dom Firmp and the Dom Tropical test type. The Dom can also be seen in Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn and Mobile Suit Gundam 0083 Stardust Memory. The Dom Tropen was developed late in the One-Year War, and it was designed to operate exclusively in localized desert and tropical regions on Earth. It was also made in two color schemes, the desert type that we're seeing here, and one that looks more like the classic Dom with darker purples and blues and with some red accents. In addition to additional sand filters to protect its equipment, specialized block-shaped armor designed to help keep sand from getting inside, and powerful cooling systems to overcome the desert heat. The Dom Tropen also featured special sand filtering intakes for its leg-mounted thermonuclear jet engines, allowing the mobile suit to retain its high-ground hovering speeds without fear of sand ruining the engines. The Dom Tropen was developed by the Zimad Company, and was later operated by the Principality of Zeon and the Delaz Fleet in 0083, and then later by the Zeon Remnants in Gundam Unicorn. The Dom Tropen weighs in at 79 metric tons, and its power comes from a Minovsky ultra-compact fusion reactor, and its armor is made of super hard steel alloy. It can go as fast as 360 kilometers per hour, which is 223 miles per hour, which is pretty fast, and it can do a 180-degree turn in 2.1 seconds. The Dom Tropen's main armaments include a scattering beam gun and a heat saber, and its optional equipment include a Ver-8 machine gun, the Rakuten bazooka, the Zaku bazooka, hand grenades, and the Sturmfausts. To say the least, the Tropen is armed to the teeth. It has such a large variety of weapons it can use thanks to the Universal Standard. It can use weapons that other mobile suits can operate with, mainly a wide variety of bazookas and machine guns that can be used with Zakus and other Zeon units, even Fallen Federation unit opponents, making these Doms a true force to be reckoned with, especially if you're in a fight with one of them on their home turf. Despite being a mass-produced type mobile suit, not many Dom films were produced during the end of the One-Year War, thus not many could be modified into the Dom Tropen. However, at least 7 units were produced. Now on to the actual model. The model is again pretty standard for a kit of its time. Pretty standard posability, and a nice touch on the hands with a moving trigger finger. Lots of ball joints and basic hinge joints with solid chunks connecting everything. Side skirts and front skirts can all move up and down. And with that Rakuten bazooka equipped, it looks big, bulky, and just plain badass. Nice storage clip for the heat rod. The removable clip and storage factor in the gun is also a really nice touch on this kit. It also comes with a pile of extra bazooka and ammo clips you can stick all over it. And 4 Sturmfausts that I can't seem to correctly attach to its butt no matter how many times I try. Anyway, let's move on to the prep work. The Dom is an older high-grade Universal Century kit, which means it has more seam lines on it, but that isn't a real issue on this particular model. The seams are mostly large ones on big areas on the suit that are all one color. Also to boot, the joints are large chunks of plastic that the legs and calves simply plug into, meaning there's little to no masking needed for joints after seams on the legs are fixed. The arms and chest are a different story, but there are a few simple mods to get around that I'll show off shortly. Now, let's break this kit down. I start by breaking the kit down completely and separating the parts that don't need seam fixing, and all the parts that do. I start by putting some plastic cement in between where the seam lines attach to one another. Plastic cement works a lot better than superglue because it actually bonds the two parts together to create a more secure fix, while superglue just kind of attaches the two. It's also wise to put a little bit on the edge. I go through and do this for all the parts that need it. There are quite a few, but again, this isn't a real issue because they're all the same color. The first part that needed modding was the chest. The two brown pieces attached together, sandwiching the tan part in between them. Normally this would require masking, but there's an easy fix so you don't have to do that. Just simply cut the tabs off. It can now be removed easily and glued into place once the seams are removed and the model is painted. The next minor modification I made was to the lower arms. The gray joint is sandwiched in between the two parts, held in place by a small peg. There's a large armor crease running down the side, which is supposed to be there. However, the seam line in the wrist is not. Simply cut the peg off, leaving a tiny bit of slack where the peg used to be. Now the joint can be slid in and out and glued into place once everything is finished. After letting the parts that have been fused together by the cement sit for a bit, it's time to add some putty. A lot of modelers only use one or the other, but I use both to ensure I make it as smooth as possible. This putty will harden after a while, and it can be sanded down to make the part smooth. Using a toothpick or a small piece of wire for application is recommended. After the parts have sat for a bit to let the putty cure completely, I bring in the sandpaper. I use a coarse 400 grit to smooth down the large chunks, and then 1500 grit to make it nice and smooth. Usually using a bit of water and going in circular motions will yield the best results. Fix the seam, I spray a bit of primer on it just to make sure that it's all completely smoothed down. There's still a few small spots that need fixing, but it's easy to fix the small ones. Using some Mr. Dissolved putty, which is basically very thin down putty, I can put a small amount on the part to fix any small gaps in it. And voila! After sanding and a bit more priming, the parts are completely smooth and ready for paint. I go through this with all the other parts that need seam lines fixed, including the shoulders, arms, weapons, and chest. And after a lot of trial and error, the parts are all finally ready to be primed. I lay down a good coat of primer on all the parts, not laying it on too thick, but just enough so the paint will stick evenly to them.
The primer does a really great job of bringing all the really awesome tiny hidden details in this kit out. Now it's time for paint. I've recently switched over to the Mr. Color brand, and it's all lacquer paint. And I really like it over the enamels, just for the fact that it dries in 5 minutes rather than taking days to cure. I lay down a pre-shade of dark brown on the tan parts, making sure to cover all the creases, panel lines, and everything else that would need shading. Trying as hard as I can to get nice, sharp, crisp lines. After the pre-shade is laid down, I lay down the base color, which is tan. Trying to get an even coat over all of the part is really important to make sure that the shading is even all over. For the darker colored pieces, I go with a different method of shading, where I lay down the base color first, and then go and highlight it with a slightly lighter color to make a nice blended shading effect. There's several different ways to shade with an airbrush, and these are just 2 that I normally use. I'll cover them all in a future video. After the painting is completed, it's always nice to lay out all the parts and have a look at what you've done. I really like these new paints. They really blend well with each other and make the shading very nice. I've also learned the importance of shading with color, instead of just using black on everything. Using browns into the tan and using different shades of brown really bring everything together in a much more natural way than just using black for everything. The next step in modeling is doing the decals and weathering. Normally decals should be applied first, but I kind of intertwine the 2 steps. It's always important to make sure that your weathering goes on top of the decals to make it have a more natural look. Normally I don't weather my kits too heavily, but for the Dom I really wanted to make it look beaten up. I started by sponging some black onto the parts, using it as sort of a base, putting it around edges and different areas that would normally be chipped on regular machinery. After the black, I sponge in some gray to give it a textured look. Occasionally wiping some excess off to do a bit of streaking. I then go in with a small detail brush, adding some chrome parts around the edges to give it a chipped look. I then use a brown Real Touch marker to add streaking and lining effects on the parts. It looks like mud or rust or just natural colors that really blend well with the black and the gray. Here's a clean part compared to a weathered part. As you can see, they look pretty different. After finishing weathering and decals, I take a once over all the parts, making sure I didn't miss anything, making sure nothing is too clean or nothing's too dirty or uneven. If it is, I go back and correct it. And after examining all the parts one last time, it's time for the final process, flat coating. A nice flat coat really brings the entire model together, blending all of the weathering together and making all the colors kind of fit with each other even better. I prefer using flat coat, but some people like semi-gloss. Final part of the model, putting it all together at the end. After the flat coat is cured all the way, I put all the parts into a box and let them sit just for a little while, and then it's time to put it all together. It's time to put everything together and see if all the hours of labor that I poured into this kit really paid off. I was really nervous about the weathering, and I really hope that I didn't overdo it because a couple people thought I did, but in the end, I think it came together pretty nice. And after it's all together, we have the final product. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This is a new style that I've been really excited to try out, and will probably be how I do all my reviews, work in progress videos from now on. Just one large episode with everything in it. This kit was a lot of fun to do and really taught me a lot about weathering, and I'm really excited to take what I learned from this and apply it to my next weathered build. Anyway guys, that's all for now. See you next time.